What if an acclaimed author was also a notorious criminal? An intriguing question that takes us into the life of Jack Henry Abbott, a man whose life was a curious mix of literary success and criminal infamy. Born in 1944, Jack's early life was a tumultuous one, marked by abandonment and a series of foster homes. This troubled childhood led him down a path that would see him enter the criminal justice system at an early age. But Jack's story is not just about crime and punishment, it's also a narrative of redemption and the power of the written word. You see, Jack Henry Abbott was not just a criminal. He was also an author, a man whose words captivated readers and caught the attention of some of the literary world's most influential figures. His book, In the Belly of the Beast, is a collection of letters written from prison, a poignant exploration of life behind bars that gave readers an inside look at the brutal realities of the American penal system. However, the complexity of Abbott's life doesn't stop there. While his book was praised for its raw and honest portrayal of prison life, it's impossible to separate the man from his actions. Abbott was a convicted murderer, a man whose violent tendencies were not quelled by his literary success. So we're left with a compelling paradox, a man who could weave together words so powerfully, yet whose actions resulted in destruction and loss. A man whose letters from prison painted a vivid picture of life behind bars, yet who couldn't escape his own violent tendencies even when given a chance at freedom. So how did this troubled kid evolve into a hardened criminal and a published author? Let's delve deeper. The seeds of crime were sown early in Abbott's life. Born on January 21, 1944, Jack Henry Abbott's journey into darkness began with abandonment. His parents, who were too caught up in their own tumultuous lives, left young Abbott to fend for himself. This lack of guidance and nurturing would prove to be a crucial factor in shaping his future. The young Abbott found himself in a world that didn't want him. Shuffled from one foster home to another, he was a child lost in the system. This period of instability, rejection, and neglect led him down a path that would ultimately define his life. As a teenager, he found himself in juvenile detention facilities more often than not. It was in these hardened institutions that Abbott got his first taste of criminal life. He was introduced to a world where the strong survived and the weak were preyed upon. This environment, harsh and unforgiving, further shaped his worldview and hardened his heart. His first crimes were acts of desperation and rebellion. He was a child trying to survive in an adult's world, making choices that were beyond his years. These choices, however, came with severe consequences. Before he could even grasp the gravity of his actions, Abbott was introduced to the prison system. Incarceration became a reality for Abbott at a very young age. The prison walls became his home, the inmates his family. He was a product of a system that had failed him, a young man who was shaped by his circumstances. The prison system, with its rigid rules and harsh punishments, did little to rehabilitate him. Instead, it further pushed him into the world of crime. He became a student of the prison culture, learning the art of survival in an environment where one wrong move could cost you your life. And as if life hadn't been hard enough, prison would become Abbott's home for many years to come. Incarceration became Abbott's norm, but it was more than just a punishment. For Jack Henry Abbott, prison wasn't just a place of confinement. It was a life stage, a crucible that forged him into the man he would become. It was where he committed his most heinous acts, but also where he penned his most thoughtful reflections. His time behind bars was marked by violence, but also by introspection. It was a paradox, much like Abbott himself. His violent behavior didn't stop at the prison gates. He was involved in several incidents, even murdering a fellow inmate. His aggressive demeanor made him a feared figure within the prison walls, but at the same time, he was cultivating another side to his persona, one that was intellectual, insightful, and deeply reflective about the harsh realities of prison life. It was during his time in prison that Abbott began to write. He poured out his thoughts and experiences onto paper, detailing the brutal and dehumanizing conditions of prison life. His letters caught the attention of acclaimed author Norman Mailer, who was fascinated by Abbott's raw and gritty portrayal of life behind bars. The two struck up a correspondence, with Mailer becoming a mentor of sorts to Abbott. Mailer was so impressed by Abbott's writings that he helped to get them published. The resulting book, In the Belly of the Beast, was a shocking and eye-opening account of life in prison. It was hailed by critics for its unflinching honesty and its stark portrayal of the prison system. Abbott had managed to turn his life of crime into a literary success, a feat that was as impressive as it was unexpected. But Abbott's story doesn't end with his literary success, far from it. His time in prison had shaped him, but it had also set him on a path that would lead to more violence, more tragedy, and ultimately, to his downfall. In 1981, Abbott experienced life outside prison walls, but freedom was fleeting. After years of confinement, Jack Henry Abbott stepped into the world as a free man. His parole was a direct result of the advocacy of many notable figures in the literary community who were moved by his profound writing. But his reintroduction to society was far from smooth. Abbott, it seemed, was a prisoner not just of the system, but also of his own past. His newfound freedom was marred by an inability to adjust to life outside prison. He found himself lost in the maze of the ordinary, grappling with the unfamiliarity of the mundane. The world outside was a stark contrast to the rigid structure of prison life he had known for most of his years. Despite his struggles, Abbott did manage to find some semblance of normalcy. He found employment at a restaurant, a simple job that offered him a chance to learn the rhythms of a life he had never known. But his past was a shadow he could not shake off. The fatal altercation with Richard Aden, a young waiter at the restaurant where Abbott worked, proved to be the turning point. A petty argument escalated into violence, and in a matter of moments, Abbott's brief taste of freedom turned sour. The incident ignited a media frenzy, casting a harsh spotlight on the system that had set Abbott free. Critics argued that his parole was a grave mistake, a misjudgment that cost a young man his life. Supporters, on the other hand, pointed to the incident as a tragic illustration of the difficulties faced by ex-convicts attempting to reintegrate into society. In the end, the law caught up with Abbott. His brief taste of freedom ended as swiftly as it had arrived. He was arrested, tried, and convicted for the murder of Richard Aden. Abbott once again found himself behind bars, his brief sojourn in the outside world but a distant memory. Abbott's taste of freedom was short-lived, and he was soon back in the familiar confines of a prison cell. Abbott's life was a tragic tale of wasted talent and untamed violence. After his brief interlude of freedom, Jack Henry Abbott was returned to the confines of prison. It seemed as though the iron bars were an inescapable part of his life's narrative, a constant reminder of the choices he had made. While incarcerated, Abbott made several attempts to secure parole. Each time he was met with refusal. His violent past, coupled with the high-profile nature of his crimes, proved to be insurmountable obstacles. Abbott's pleas for a second chance fell on deaf ears, and he was left to languish in his cell. His final years were spent in solitude, a stark contrast to the media frenzy that had once surrounded his name. Yet even in isolation, Abbott's mind remained active. He continued to write, his words a testament to his intellect and talent. But despite his literary prowess, it was his life of crime that left a lasting impression. In the end, Abbott chose to end his own life. His story culminated in a tragic suicide, a stark reminder of the wasted potential that was Jack Henry Abbott. His life had been a tumultuous journey marked by violence, incarceration, brief freedom, and ultimately, despair. Reflecting on Abbott's life, it's hard to reconcile the talented writer with the violent criminal. His writings provided a glimpse into his intellect, but his actions painted a picture of a man consumed by anger and violence. It's a stark reminder that talent and intellect can be overshadowed by a life of crime and violence. Jack Henry Abbott's life serves as a stark reminder that talent and intellect can be overshadowed by a life of crime and violence. As we delve into the dark corners of humanity, we uncover stories such as Abbott's that leave us with more questions than answers. Remember to subscribe to Rotten Crimes, like this video, and share it with your fellow true crime enthusiasts. Our journey into the heart of darkness continues as we explore more chilling tales from the annals of crime. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep seeking the truth.